Hi everyone, welcome back. We're chatting about Bardskull again. We've got a couple of interesting selections to share with you tonight, and we're joined by Gabi and by Mary. They are wonderful mentors from our community, and we love thinking about epic legendary stuff. And this book, Bardskull, if you haven't yet grabbed a copy, there's a link in the description. Grab it. We are trying to climb into the mindset of a ancient story. Well, he's not ancient, he's still alive, but ancient-minded storyteller named Martin Shaw, who's become very popular in circles around, like Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Pajot, but he's become one of my heroes. He's somebody who's absolutely fascinating to read. And as a community, like legend fiction is, where we are trying to not only rewild our imagination, but sort of re-holify what it means to be telling stories, and that it's not just mere, getting up to whatever your mind gets up to, but it can actually be not only a vocation, but a very real engagement with beautiful and dangerous and interesting and real things that do require discernment. And so it's something that we believe is important. Anyhow, welcome, ladies. It's good to see you. Welcome back to our Bardskull combo.
Yay!
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, okay, I've got a little selection, and we can go through it the usual way. I'll read it a little bit, and then we'll walk around it together, and I'd love to know what you ladies think. So let's get into it. Here is a first selection. I'm on it's a Kindle highlight. It says it's page 133, so whatever that does for you. Calling stories is like a calling of medicines, and he's using it in the sense of invoking. Calling stories, invoking stories, it's like a calling of medicines or familiars. I have a few: epic medicine, folk medicine, fairy medicine, even a little bit of legend medicine. Had to get that one in there for us. These have been very precarious to gather and have poisoned me on more than one occasion. They won't get me well till they've seen me weakened. It takes a while for a story to reveal its particular power, and as a storyteller, you can never locate it on the page. It's only in the telling. There will be outward signals. You'll get sensitized to the outward signals. Wait till you see it writ large in front of you. Some stories are smooth and self-sufficient. Others needy, requiring endless rounds of reassuring. Others built for the roar of the tavern. Some little scrappy puffs of magic that don't stay for long and refuse to learn your name. Some stories you couldn't hang your coat on. Others you could your soul. Stories to be lived by, stories as caution, stories as seance, stories as witchcraft, stories as mass-inflicted healing, stories as full-on gambling with the fates, stories as seizures of truth-telling, stories as hypnosis, stories to outrun history, and others to confirm it. I'll just pause there for a second. That's a trip right there. What fun. What's going through your minds? Mary, what do you think? What's going through your mind with that?
I think it kind of sums up one of the main points of the book, which is like how stories come to a person. And it's not just our own invention. Like the way he's talking about it, it's like a relationship you're having with these stories, like they have to get me sick and or they have to get me sick until they get me well until they get me weakened. Oh yeah, there you go. They can't get me well until they get me weakened. I really think that's true. Like, sometimes when you're writing and I'm writing over and over and over again, and I'm just like, no, it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. It's not right. And then I can finally like break through. Eventually, they're writing all these awful drafts, or ones that they're just mediocre. I think actually they're more mediocre than awful. Which is kind of even worse. Lukewarm. But I love when he was talking about the different kinds of stories. I guess the ones that really stood out to me were like the mass inflicted healing, and then like the seizures of truth telling. I love that part. It's like sometimes, when you can write something that you just like, oh yeah, it just comes to you, and you're like, okay, this is the truth. But it's so fleeting. Like you have to just kind of write it once it comes, and then it's gone again. But it's really important to hang on to those moments. Because like we get lost in a lot of falsehood.
Yeah, how many stories feel like these? What did he say? Little puffs, scrappy puffs of magic that don't stay for long and refuse to learn your name. It's like 3 a.m. every, at least once a week or something, right?
Oh yeah.
Gabi, what's going through your mind with that
You
selection?
know, when Mary brought up the line, it has to get me sick again before it can get me well. I was just thinking about how, we as the authors, we have to kind of bear ourselves in this really uncomfortable way almost when we're writing like a story that really comes from inside of us. Like my second book done, that theme is about forgiveness, and I wrote this thing at a time when I was really having a hard time forgiving someone, and I put a lot of just kind of vulnerability on those pages. It was me trying
Mm-hmm.
to just dig in and wrestle with, grapple with God, like Jacob did. Me
Mm-hmm.
just trying to figure out what is this. And so we have to let the story make us sick. So I had to like open up to all this just anger that I had
Mm-hmm.
over this
Yeah.
thing in order for it to heal, which was to then get to the end of the book, see my character see her heal, and then see, maybe I can heal this way too. Maybe this is how
Mm-hmm.
it ends. Maybe this is
Mm-hmm.
how it goes. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. Thank you. Um, he's got a line. If I can barely remember it, it's in his other book, which we were discussing last time a little bit. Oh, come on, what was it called? Courting the
Courting the
Wild
other
Twin.
twin, wild
Oh, well
twin.
done. You remember that. Um, and he's got this metaphor, this image of how stories they're I'm gonna butcher it, so I'll just do it what I can remember. The stories sometimes land inside you. They're like elves or mermaids, um, crawling out of the ocean, and they need to be cared for and nurtured out of the storm for a while. Maybe for you to benefit from, or maybe for you to help them heal and sort of get their legs so that they then can head off into somebody else or into other things that they're trying to accomplish in their life. And I thought that was such a cool metaphor because, like, I don't know if you're like me, and I think a lot of our authors in our community are, where stories will they're like buckshot every 2 days, and it's like, here's a new idea, here's a new idea. Okay, maybe some of that is like just fun. And I think maybe that's also an important part of you is, are you alive? It's like this great line I've learned that I keep trying to tell myself over and over. You can't steer a parked car.
Mhm.
Right. So if you want to be in motion, if you want to be able to catch something, a falling star, right, you got to be able to move at the drop of a hat or the drop of a star, and that takes practice, that takes motion. So it's okay to be like regularly open and maybe practicing the sort of mental art of flexing storytelling and messing around with characters, even if maybe nothing comes from it. I
Mhm.
tend to get like way too serious, like, oh, I have to get married to this new idea. Oh no, here's a new one. I have to get married to this new idea and commit 3 months of my life to it.
Oh yeah.
Maybe you don't have to. Maybe it's okay to store it. Maybe you're called. Now, these are a level of storytelling that's kind of fun. But then there's the level of stories, like he says, where stories you can hang your soul on, or a story that's a kind of, what did he say, like a seance, right? Or a story that, like a seizure of truth, right? These are the kinds of things that are so much deeper than just, let's have fun with, I don't know, turning saints into superheroes, right? We're talking about something that really moves you and your person and your being at a very deep level. And maybe you keep coming back to that same story over and over again under multiple guises, and it's trying to interact with you or communicate with you. This sense is what so intrigues me. One is that there can be multiple reasons for stories. There are multiple kinds of stories, right? I think there's a lot of people out there who don't actually get that. And so when they see, for example, a story told, let's say, about our Catholic faith or about, I don't know, things like anti-heroes or cautionary tales, they can only assume stories only exist to edify us with right action and noble living or something.
Yeah.
And if that is your only definition, then, well, that's 5% of the available literature that's out there. There's a
Mhm.
ton of it that does not meet that, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's all wrong. Your definition needs to be broadened. So I like his kind of litany of stories as caution, stories as mass inflicted healing, like you said, Mary, stories as hypnosis, or stories to outrun history, or stories to confirm it. There's multiple reasons for stories. I love this hilarious line. Some stories are needy, requiring endless rounds of reassuring. That's just so. That's such a. It's true though, and again, everybody who's not an author is looking at us, going, "Are you guys okay? Like, what's actually going on inside you?" It's like, yeah, welcome. It's crazy in here,
Mhm.
and that's good. All right, I thought that was a cool little selection. Thank you for your thoughts here. This is one little. It's like a little highlight, a personal highlight, not really a selection, but it's so good. I just wanted to read it. Where he says, "I'm going out and I am sitting down." And I'm performing this pilgrimage, this practice back into my imagination, right? And so he says this little thing. I could have just gobbled some psychoactive plant, but I can't trust a ceremony without a great swath of grinding boredom in it. That showing upness. I can't just ride disorientation and thrill. And I didn't highlight it, but he says a little later, this is why he loves these long, for example, Orthodox liturgies or Byzantine liturgies that go for 2-3 hours. And he's like, the point at which it starts to become boring is the point where I'm like, it's working. I have finally let go of the before. I am now associated with what I walked in here with, and now maybe I can start paying attention.
I like that.
Yeah. Is
I
that
think
like
it applies to our
recollection?
writing. Sorry?
That sounds like recollection. I'm thinking like when we're in the convent, they have the practice of silence. And the point is to stay recollected on thinking about God. But it's just like you want it to be silent. Like also like in your mind, you don't want to be having all this background noise and junk playing in your head. You just want to be living in the present moment with God. And that's it.
That's hard, man.
It's
I try to be
very
quiet
hard.
10 in the morning. It is just a hot mess of conversation. That's a nightclub up there. Just the music and the stories and the stuff that's going on is hard, but it's like I need it. I need it. And it's kind of like to hear that is encouraging because there are those moments where I'm trying to be quiet and it's quiet and I'm starting to feel like itchy, like I need to go do something, I need to go hear something, I need to listen to something. But to just remember that when you get to that point where you're just like, what am I doing here in the quiet? That means something good's happening.
Yeah.
It's like this detox kind of a thing.
Yeah, detox. That's a good word for it. In the
There's
beginning,
a
at least.
line, I don't remember where it's from, but this is a piece of advice that I keep coming back to, especially in those kind of moments. And it's so easy if you're like a creative person, it's so easy if you were to like imagine you are a well, and then you burn out and you dry out because you use up all of your creativity and then you burn out and you have used everything up because well, you burned out. There's nothing left. And you're tired and exhausted. And that makes you frustrated because, dang it, creativity is supposed to be an ever-flowing, life-giving thing. I should never be running out, and then you get mad and then you burn out even deeper and stuff. Well, there's so this recommendation. Okay, and by the way, that's me, in case that wasn't obvious. Well, sometimes you get like this little inch of standing water that comes in the bottom of the well. And as soon as I get that sense, I'm like, oh, I can breathe. Go and just use it and burn it and stuff and deploy it. And then I, of course, burn out really quickly again. As opposed to just let it sit, let it fill up, let it get, maybe it doesn't have to get all the way back up to the top again. Maybe you use that to learn to pace yourself or something. But that sense that sometimes, I think a lot of us do this today, we don't have the patience to, like a battery, to let the energy store up again. So for me, like this past couple of weeks, I've been unable to like seriously do any writing at all. As cool and as intense as these conversations are, I've not been able to actually do it. And so I feel really guilty. I'm a failure. I'm not an author. Writers write, right? And so, well, I'm not doing that. I must be a failure. Well, there's other things going on. I'm thinking through, trying to do a lot of other things. But also what is happening, I'm trying to let my sort of creative well fill back up. Let that battery recharge. So that when the moment is right, I can get back into it. It's not always possible or practical to be like, every single day. There are some people who can, and maybe they get paid to do it and they excel at it. I think it's just a matter of knowing, what does work for you. So the line where he says, I don't trust a ceremony without a great swath of grinding boredom in it. Not only did it make me think of Sunday Mass sometimes or Easter Vigil or something, but the process of writing your novel and the point where you hit the down turn, the dip. There's actually a it's not a metaphor. It's like a data backed awareness of when you're starting your own business as an entrepreneur. There's like you start at the baseline, you start going up, you launch your business, things are going well, people are buying from you, and then all of a sudden they stop buying and it goes back down, and that's called the dip. And now, if you were to like extend the rest of the diagram, you'd see the dip then slowly curves, and then it starts curving back up again, and that's winningness is up there. The thing is, everybody stops when you hit the dip because they automatically assume I'm a failure, I'm not doing the right thing, the market doesn't want me, this project is not worth it. Whereas what the dip actually is, it's like the proving ground. Like, are you really serious about this? Because there's a lot of people trying to do what you're in this space. So if you're writing a novel or if the novel is actually worth it, there's a lot of things demanding your time. So after the honeymoon is over, now the question is, are you really serious about this? Because if you are, you're going to keep showing up. And then once you do sort of get through that, sometimes it can last years for small businesses and so on. I'm sure it's the same for books too. Like a project that really matters, if it was all rainbows the whole way through, I would actually genuinely wonder how real and deep is that story. I mean, it's okay for things to be fun. We're not talking about just purely doing things for fun. But when you are trying to do something that feels like, I'm trying to do something that matters and that's serious, I think you're going to find a dip. There's a point where your energy sort of bottoms out, and it might just take, quote, the grinding boredom, of just 2 words today. I'm done. That's all I can make, and it's not rainbows and lightning and fireflies and stuff. I'm sure any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, when you say that, I think the reason why it is a good story is because you do have those like times when you don't feel inspired, but you just know you need to keep on writing it anyways. Like it's like you have to be relentless about it. Like the story won't leave you alone. You can't leave the story alone. You just have to keep doing it, even when it maybe doesn't make you feel very good, or your writing is not very good.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a cue that it's actually worth it. Yeah, it won't leave you alone.
Oh yeah, you hit that part in every book where you're just like, is this even like a good premise? Do I even know how to write? It's like all of a sudden you think you just don't know how to do anything. It's not worthwhile. And you even start to hate it. Like for each of my books, there's always a minute. And with the second book, it was shorter than the first book because I kind of recognized it. I was about to go on a tangent, but I won't do that. But where you're just like, I hate this right now. I don't even want to I just want to stop. I want to, but you plow through. And I'm glad we're having this conversation now because I'm approaching that benchmark with my latest book. Like I'm right at the bit where I'm probably in the next month or two going to be like, I hate this thing. So when that happens, I'm going to come back to this conversation, be like, nope. It's when you get through the grinding boredom that you know it's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Or if you get into that grinding boredom, and then you maybe you do slow down, and it really does ask you. It's a chance for you to really ask yourself, do I actually believe in this to come back and to keep trying? Because sometimes you do hit that grinding boredom phase, like you're starting a small business, or you're just getting into any sort of project. And once you get past the honeymoon and the dopamine of it, then you can actually ask yourself, is this really worth it?
Yeah.
And sometimes you go, yeah, no, it's not. I wrote a couple of dope chapters, but it's okay to just shelve it and move on and do something else. And it was just a practice exercise. I didn't know it at the time. Now I know that it is. I'm good. I'm not, Yeah. All right. Let's talk about imagination. So he makes a reference to something called, I think it's a word that he's created. It's called Wolferland, right? So it's, we've talked in the last episode about being prowled by wolves or seeing wolves, right? So the kind of world where this is happening to you, he calls Wolferland. So he makes a reference to something called Doggerland. And for those who don't know, Doggerland is a swath of plains of land, that's now completely sunken in between Britain and the continent and the mainland. And that used to be, during the last ice age, above water. and then 10,000 years ago, it all just got swallowed up by the ocean. So they discovered it was something of note when they accidentally, or like a fisherman in 1931, I can say that because I was just Googling it 10 minutes ago. He dug up some peat, and there was, I think, arrowheads or pottery or something in it. And that's when they realized, oh my goodness, people used to live on these plains down there. There's archaeological residue and all over this. And so it ended up, becoming a source of real fascination. So with that tangent out of the way, he says here, Wolferland is distended imagination. It's not a place that you can jab at on a map. It's made up of every roused thread of magic thought, or every roused thread of magic that it's ever roved between England and the big lands beyond. It's as much a binding agent as Doggerland. Wolferland is the dream twin of Doggerland. It's older than any temporary upswing of tide. Wolferland is a bone bridge of timelessness and time-bound, and identifiable in almost all British folk tales and mythologies worth their salt. Coleridge crossed it, Blake, Shakespeare practically had a bus pass, so frequent his trips. It's a footbridge for the roaming soul, robust enough to walk on. Merlin knew it, Taliesin too. That bridge built the Arthurian romances. It brought us chivalry, all sorts of hidden secrets returning from the Crusades. They still glitter in the branches of the trees out there, those secrets. They brighten up the bushes like candles of flame. Pause there for a second. The major thought that comes to my mind in reading that is, have you ever read Smith of Wootton Major by Tolkien? No. Okay.
Not for a long time.
There's I think I've only read it maybe once or twice. He's got, okay, this is my assumption of why the name is Smith of Wootton Major. It's actually the same reason why the name Harry Potter is picked. It means like the nobody, the not special nobody. So, and then Wootton Major means it's just the bigger version of Wootton Minor. It's just like somewhere out there. It's like the nobody from nowhere that kind of means nothing and nobody cares, right? But this person, he grows up, I think, as a blacksmith, I think, or somebody who is in traineeship, or he's a journeyman for somebody else who has these very special skills. And one day he goes out for a walk. And, I forgot. When he was a kid, I think he was gifted a very special gift. It's like this little glowing diamond sort of star thing, which you wear on your forehead. And then I think only you can see it, and then nobody else can see it afterwards. And then you can take it off, and then you can give it to somebody else, and then they put it on, and then nobody else can see it. And he's like, okay, this is cool. And he goes for a walk out in the woods one day, and then he accidentally, because he's wearing this star, slips across into the land of Faery. And then Tolkien went and wrote this whole article, right, on the imagination and the land of Faery and stuff. And he slips into this land of Faery, and he just keeps right on walking, and he keeps going, and all of a sudden stuff starts getting beautiful and strange and eerie and weird, and he's able to walk across entire glassy lakes and look down and see floating red either fish or pondweed or something like this, and there are curious, strange beings and so on, and there's elves dancing and singing in this world, and then he comes back, and he ends up becoming this sort of realm walker who can walk between these different worlds. And again, he's not a great mystic or a shaman or a saint or somebody super special who inherited. He's not a son of a king. He's just a little nobody. And then he realizes by the end of the story that this gift is something that connects him to this great, as what did Martin say, distended imagination, not just my own imagination, but this sort of and it's not imaginary, it's imaginal. This imaginal realm in which all of our imaginations can tap into and do participate in. And he is able to travel to there, and the greatest gift that he can give is to give this star on to the next person. Because this person's going to come back like a Robinson Crusoe, right? Enriched by contact and experience with all of what this realm is. This is this realm, this Wolferland, as he calls it, the land of Faery, or it's this place where stories come from, where stories live, where stories grow, and then they sort of slip into us or slip into multiple, of us at the same time, anyhow, that's something that comes to my mind when he's talking about this, because he says very clearly, Coleridge crossed into this place all the time. Shakespeare had a bus pass. This bridge built the Arthurian romances and all sorts of hidden, beautiful things. It's outside of time, which means in every era, every age, we can like travel into it and dip into it. That's why you get these ideas that like keep re-emerging or welling up in storytellers generation after generation, until they like land in like the cultural consciousness, or they start being honored through things like liturgies and cultural practices that sort of ground them and keep them anchored here. Otherwise they, we lose them. What's going through your minds? What do you think, Gabi? What do you think?
Well, just that last piece you were talking about how, the greatest literature just keeps impacting, and not only impacting, it then prompts other people to create themselves. And I was just thinking of recently, I came across this musical called Epic, and it's a retelling of the Odyssey. And the music is phenomenal.
Awesome.
It's absolutely phenomenal. And the storyline is so touching. Oh my goodness. And then, not only did like Homer, however many thousand years ago, 3,000 years ago, he is still inspiring more art. But then that art, then there were people making animatics. So then that art inspired more art. And by the end of it, I was crying. That is how touching this entire collaboration of artwork is. And so I was just thinking about how art and beauty, it procreates and it evolves, but it just keeps making it is fruitful and it multiplies and it gives more of itself.
Wow, that's what a great insight. Mary, what's going through your mind?
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it. Yes. I had a question. So about the imaginal realm, is that like it sounded like is it older than like our cultural consciousness? Is it more than just the sum of what people have imagined over the years? Is it like something beyond like what humans have imagined? Is it like a different place? I'm just
I know.
trying to
Great
understand
question.
it.
Yeah. I can't quite speak for Martin, although I'm guessing his answer, where I'm going to go, is going to be what he thinks too. It's my sense of what he's saying. Here's my understanding of this. What we're calling the imaginal realm is not the collective pool of human imagining. It is a realm of angelic activity in which we participate, because our very ability to have imaginations is a borrowed power, I guess you could say, from some degree of the angelic realm. Every one of our instincts is the same thing. It's like a borrowed power from the angel of that instinct, right? That ability. So these the Neoplatonic thing is the fancy name for how the Greeks were trying to make sense of the world, that everything is, there's these eternal forms that exist in the heavens, and then everything on earth participates in these forms, and that's how we're able to understand sword-ness, dog-ness, chair-ness, and each of those things exist eternally, and things in matter participate in those, embody them, model them, until something changes and the form changes, and then they take on or participate in another form. Well, as incarnational Christians, we would go, these forms are not just unalive ideals, they are living beings who are fractaling out the infinite, majesty and creativity of God. So I guess that would mean there is an angel for dogness, and then dogs participate in what it means to be a dog from that specific kind of angel. So when it comes to the imaginal realm, you're now dealing with there is a what is he called? I think he was Christian or he was Catholic. I can't remember which. His name was Henry Corbin, and he went to study the Sufis and the Sufi mystics and how they were very, very deep into this understanding of something called the imaginal realm. This is one major reason why I use this word, where it's like, this is not just your imagination, that which is inside your head. This is a very specific part of creation, part of our universe, and it's where all the angels, where things that are pure intelligences, pure consciousness, where they operate. And because it's not in matter, they are not bound by locality, they're not bound by space and time. So they're able to interact with everything because they exist outside of space and time, and they're able to dip into it when they need to. So this is kind of echoing what he talks about stories coming in all different shapes and sizes, interacting with us like medicines, sometimes like what's the kind of medicine that stimulates a response, like a homeopathic, remedies. Sometimes stories are like that. Sometimes they blind you, sometimes they seduce you. It is likely or possible that these are emissaries or messages or presences from different kinds of beings that want to participate or engage with us or communicate with us, have things they want to share with us that help and heal, or are trying to harm you because you're so dang armored up against anything getting in you, and they gotta wound you to break you open a bit so that you can be healed, right? Because we don't like that at all. Like my 11-year-old can't stand that when I've got to get, involve some sort of punishment because she's holding on to her druthers. Anyway, so I think short answer to your question, although Tolkien has I think a lot of us read Tolkien's article, for example, on fairy stories, and we take it as a beautiful extended metaphor for how our imagination works. I think that someone like Corbin or Owen Barfield or Martin Shaw is going to go, no, this is an actual very, very real place. And our childish minds, our childish imaginations are tapping into and drawing life down from this vibrant, thriving reality. And we're able to sort of suck off from it the little bits that we can handle or the little bits that reach us. And kind of the goal of I think growing up in your spiritual life is learning to sort of take in more and more and understand more and more of what it means and how we're supposed to engage or relate to it, and then mediate that out to everybody else who doesn't have maybe as wide a straw as we might, as a creative fiction sort of minded person. A lot of other people just don't even have much going on at all, and so they thrive on the stories and the audiobooks and the movies that creatives create, because creatives are like Smith from Wooten Major. You got this little diamond star in your head that gives you an insight into crossing over into this other realm. That's not to say that every imaginative idea that we have is a blessed gift from the gods. That's not what we're saying. But there could be sometimes that is mixed in, and it's sort of our job is to learn to discern and tell apart and cultivate and nurture that which really can be. You are welcome to argue or object or ask questions, but that's what I've understood.
I think that's what, when I look for a book, that's what I'm looking for, is for the ones I can tap into that higher plane. But yes, it is not every story. So yeah, I think I think that it's really good to have that distinction. Sorry, no, I'm just thinking about everything you said. But very profound. That I got so excited when you said it's a real place. I'm like, yes, I knew it. It's I remember being in English class and we're reading these stories, and one of them they had a character who was looking through and seeing another world, and my English teacher was like, and of course this is fiction, so it's not real. And I was like, no, it's real.
Yes. That's why it lasts, I believe. That's why I was talking with this one nun, Sister Nancy Usselman. She wrote a book called Becoming Media Mystics. And so I have a conversation with her on the Legend Fiction channel. And she said something which I have loved, where she's like, the reason why stuff resonates and lands in popular culture is because the spirit is moving through humanity. Not just baptized Christians, all humanity, because God loves and desires the salvation of every human person. Right. So the Holy Spirit is moving through people. So when we see stuff obviously not everything in popular media, but when we do see stuff that's oh, that's actually really good, and then it takes off and people can't get enough of it, even from other cultures or other upbringings, and they don't even have the language or the ideas that we might say as Christians that we're trying to make sense of, but they intuit there is something beautiful and human and real, and I want this, and I don't know how to live it out in a way that's maybe healthy or appropriate and makes sense, but I want what this is. It's because there is a return to something more deeply human in it.
Yeah,
And that's
I'm
why
gonna
I'm going
come
to
back.
pause it. Go ahead,
Oh,
Gabi. What
I
do
was
you
just
think?
gonna say I'm gonna come back to Epic real quick, that
Yeah.
musical that, again, like you just said, taken off. Absolutely just blown off the charts. Everybody loves it. YouTube
Mhm.
Shorts is it's the darling of YouTube Shorts. It's everywhere.
Amazing.
And it's ancient Greek myths, but not
Mhm.
really, because what it really is it's the story
Mhm.
of a husband, of a father who is loyal, who is faithful, who is unwavering, who protects his beloved. That's
Mhm.
what it's about, which
Mhm.
is God.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we did, like all the people on YouTube Shorts, they're not seeing that at that moment because we're talking about Odysseus, not God.
Mhm.
But that is the reason we connect with it so much. It's because that that piece of God's heart, that piece of the divine,
Mhm.
that is what is being tapped into in this musical. It's not just something that, it's not one of those things, one of those stories that, what did it say, couldn't hold a coat? Is that what it said? It's not one of those.
Exactly.
It's
No,
one of
it's a
those that
story
could
that you can
hold your
hang your
soul.
soul on.
You could
Yes,
hang your
exactly.
soul on it,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. The stories that keep coming back. It's kind of like King Arthur, right?
Yeah.
Mary, you get this right. It keeps coming back. We can't not retell it. Okay, we can argue that a lot of the retellings are kind of whatever, but
Lame.
there's something that seriously, yeah, it captures our imagination because there's something deeply archetypally, mythically true, and then we just retell it over and over in different ways with different characters. You strip away the British culture and maybe you tell it in like a different, you set it in the future, you make it sci-fi or something. There's a story that I thought would be, I don't know how or if I'll ever tell it, but this sort of captures something that I've been thinking for a long time. I was approaching it from a negative side, whereas we're talking from a positive side of like good things want to keep coming back. And I was going from like 10 years ago from like, well, the negative things keep coming back. The idea was that there was like not a museum, it was more like a zoo for monstrous beings, right? And these things are like Lovecraftian, although that's probably too big a thing. They're just like big, all kinds of weird tentacle things or massive jaws, like very, very Star Wars kind of zoo sort of thing. And the idea is that they are guarded and they are kept caged so that they can be studied routinely by a very special class of people. And these people would enter into their cages and they would wear very special kind of protective suits and whatever. And the idea would be to interact with these beings, to understand them, these monsters and creatures, understand them, track them, create literature about them, and see what antidotes are created to their poison, maybe allow themselves to be infected a little bit so that they could create these antidotes and so on. Well, what then happens is there's a group of, I don't know, fundamentalists or something who are like, monsters should not exist as the theme. And so they go full on Gaston and the villagers and they break into this zoo, this museum thing, and they go around killing all of these monsters, torching them, burning them, doing whatever. And these things are evil. There's no mistake about it. Some of them might be good, but I haven't thought that far into the story. So they go through and they kill them all, and this class of wardens, whatever they're called, they're absolutely panicking. No, you can't do that. These things have to be alive because here's what nobody has remembered outside the walls of this academy thing is that when you kill these things, these monsters, they don't just die and go away forever. They disapparate and they reapparate in another time, in another place, wearing a slightly different body, with
Mhm.
maybe slightly different capacities, or they're exactly the same. And because they're dead, nobody has remembered them or why they're important or how to interact with
Right.
them or whatever. And so now these things can run rampant and we have no armor, no thought protection, no magic spells or whatever. And so the worst thing you can do is try to kill and forget and burn these things. So the reason why, okay, what's all that about? Well, I don't know where the rest of the story goes, but it's the idea was it was a fictive way of talking about things like heresies or bad theology or stuff like that. Is when you don't keep that kind of thing alive, sort of to inoculate you so that you can see it again, well, you end up with the ridiculous merry-go-round that we keep getting on every 50 years where all the old ideas come right back again because nobody sort of kept them alive and tried to classify them and label them and understand them and so on. I think you could also flip this and now go the other way, which is more this conversation, which is good things will keep coming back, not just because we aren't able to honor them and articulate them appropriately, but because, especially if something is good, it takes a lot to express it. Something evil actually can be expressed sometimes very simply in a single way because it's an abortive, reductive, simplistic, and that is what ends up making something harmful, is that it's not diversified enough to actually engage with and interact with all the different needs and times and, people and so on, where something good keeps coming back over and over. And I think that's why we have classics. It's because humanity recognizes there's an enduring good inside this. Okay, now there can also be like canons of literature that just sort of keep things alive beyond their due date. But there are some stories, though, that have an enduring truth because it communicates something about who we are as persons that we can never let go of, and we need to like re-engage with it. So like what you said about epic, right, and Odysseus, and actually Ralph Fiennes is just acted in his own version of the Odyssey, which
I didn't see the movie, but I saw the preview.
Okay, I can't wait to see that one because I love the Odyssey. And darn, where was I going? Oh, he not only models God the Father, and like you said, but what he does offer to us is here is almost a lived or an imaginal, not imaginary. Here's an imaginal experience of what it means to be a good father, good husband, a leader seeking to be a good leader, right? And that's what an archetype would then be. An imaginal experience would be an archetype. And so for those who go like, oh, archetypes are just something you imagine and we share them together and talk about them, it's like, no. Jung was very, very clear. And yet I think seriously, as you read a lot of mystic or Christian literature, things that are archetypal are things that are outside of space and time that we participate in. We call them forms, we call them archetypes. I'm going to call them angels. We'll call them the gods. And thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
This was great.
That was
Mary,
great.
you want to? Any final thoughts, Mary, and we'll wrap up for today. No pressure.
I think I can match how wonderful that was.
I hope it's helpful.
I enjoyed listening to it.
Well, Gabi, anything that came to your mind after that?
No, I think that's it. Just a kind of little addendum. Just you were talking about how massive and immense, a good thing is, and that's why it needs to be retold so many times. And I was just thinking, well, that's because God is infinite. There is like no way to actually get down to the bottom of him. It's just profound, the depths. And so as many times as we can explore another facet of him, it's getting a little bit more of him that we never saw before.
Yeah, God's always a surprise.
Yes. Don't we know that?
Wonderful. Ladies, thank you both for joining us tonight. We will probably be back to next week with some more selections and more scintillating, stimulating thinking that hopefully inspires you to keep writing. And if you did enjoy this, you can actually come hang out with us in the Legend Fiction community. We're in there almost every day. You can respond to thoughts and posts, and you're certainly welcome to jump into the comments in this video, hit the like button, share with us your questions, your comments, your objections. Those are welcome too. And make sure that you have a look at the links in the description to grab a copy of Bardskull, and then that's a way to support Martin Shaw. It's one of the reasons why we're doing this, is like we think his work is so cool. Everybody should know about this. And if you want a t-shirt, with this green sort of Bardskull thing that we created to celebrate this, let us know. I might throw it up on our Shopify, what is it called? Printify, so that we can get it. I kind of want one for myself. It's so cool. Till next time, keep writing, and may the Lord be with you.
This is the way.
The way.
Take off every fandom all at once. Yeah.